Most people think that running an online business is just sunshine and roses, especially creative-driven businesses. But the reality is that is actually very much not true. The truth is, running a creative-driven online business is sometimes even harder than running a non-creative one, and it comes with a lot of hardships. Now listen, I'm not here to try to convince you not to start your own creative business. I mean, I run my own full-time creative business. I help coach dozens of other creatives to start and grow their creative businesses, so I would not make a video trying to convince you not to do that. This video is actually for the opposite purpose. I'm making this video for the serious creatives who want to change their life and who want to be able to fully pursue their creativity full time so that they could better prepare themselves for the roadblocks that they will inevitably face to further enhance their likelihood of success. I'm going to be going over the 9 most common issues that I've dealt with the most running my own creative business that I've also seen through other people's creative businesses. Now, for every single one of these points that you might face, I'm going to give you a solution to all of the problems so that you won't even have to worry. So go ahead and get a pen and paper or your notes app, and let's get into the video. So the first thing that I struggled with, and I see a ton of other creatives struggle with, is the fact that you will fail, and that is the whole point. It is guaranteed. There is no way to avoid failure, and what really needs to happen here is a change of mindset with failure. You are going to wake up every single day for a long time with an empty bank account, with no views, with no website traffic, all of the things that you were trying to do to succeed as a creative and make a living full time. It's not going to happen right away. And honestly, I feel like most creatives quit their pursuit of monetization after the very first setback. And if that's the mindset that you're going into when trying to start a creative business, it's not going to work. There's only one true failure, and that's quitting. If you quit, there's zero chance of you reaching your goal. But if you keep going, it is inevitable. So instead of shying away from failure and trying to avoid doing anything wrong, I want you to lean into that feeling and view failures simply as data points and experiences that show you what works and what doesn't, right? Each time that you do something wrong, you learn why you shouldn't do it. And each time that you try something new and it works, you learn why you should do it. Truthfully, now that I am over 5 years deep in my creative journey, I don't look at anything like a failure anymore. Obviously, when you try really hard on something and it doesn't go the way that you want it to, that can really hurt. But in the end, it truly is a good thing because you can use it as an opportunity to come back even better. The second thing that I want to talk about, which I think is one of the most unique points that I have seen nobody talk about, is a lack of setting creative boundaries. Now, when you hear that, you're probably like, what are you talking about, right? What is a creative boundary, right? That doesn't make any sense. So allow me to explain. And I'm going to explain this through a personal experience of mine that I have gone through time and time again, and I have finally found a way to avoid it. So for the first couple years of my creative business journey, I remember just grinding all day, getting as much content out as I could, getting as many eyes on me as I could, and just really grinding and creating all day, every day. But after a certain point in time, you're going to reach a point where you've been creating all day, you've been focused on, pursuing a successful creative business. And once you kind of clock out and you finally have time for yourself, you don't want to create. You have no spark, you have no energy to create because you've spent all of your time all day doing just that. And that specific situation is basically worst case scenario, and that is exactly what you want to avoid. So that is why I set creative boundaries. So no matter what your creative expression of choice is, whether you're an artist, musician, graphic designer, a writer, it doesn't matter. Choose what aspect you're going to monetize, and then choose what things within that creative expression you're saving just for yourself. That way, when you do finally have time to rest, when you do have time for yourself, you could still look forward to creating, to, expressing yourself, because the end goal of starting a creative business is to support yourself and to create all the time and do that thing that you love all day, every day. But if you aren't careful, like I said, that form of creative expression that you love so much can kind of become a job. So if you are very intentional about the creative boundaries that you set, you can easily avoid this problem. The third thing, which I used to do all the time and I still see people do all the time, and it drives me crazy, is waiting for anything to be perfect. It doesn't exist. Like, I'm just here to tell you, you will not find that. And if you're deep into your creative journey, maybe you understand this already because it's important to understand through creative expression as well. There's never really a perfect finished product, and like the perfect perfect project doesn't really exist. That same concept applies to business, right? There's no perfect product. There's no amount of work and preparation that you could do that will make you like $1 million versus $1,000. It just doesn't exist. And this kind of ties back to the first point that I was talking about, where failure is inevitable. There is no such thing as a perfect product, but the closest you're going to get is through a ton of trial and error, like over and over and over and over. It might feel like a drag, but after you keep doing this like hundreds of times, you're going to realize that you have just intrinsically improved way more than you thought. And the reality is your success grows with you, right? So what you want to understand is that finishing something is better than making something perfect. Done is better than perfect. And trying to over polish anything just completely kills your momentum and success. So do not try to be perfect. If that is your main focus, success is almost guaranteed not to happen. Launch ugly, improve fast. People will have no problem joining you on that journey. The fourth thing that I see creative entrepreneurs do way too much is underpricing their work, right? In my notes, I actually wrote down underpricing or overpricing, but I'm going to be real. It's very rare that you do see a creative person overpricing their work on the internet, right? It's not as common. But to address overpricing, to put it simply, if you overprice something, you just get no sales, and that means you can't support yourself financially. But underpricing is a far worse issue, right? Because it's going to create this creative burnout within you, where if you are relying on your cheap prices to kind of stand out and compete against the market and support yourself financially, that is basically a path directly down to selling things for $0, right? You can't go any lower than zero. And if your entire marketing strategy is, oh, look how cheap my prices are, it's just going to keep going down, right? You know, you're just going to keep lowering and lowering and lowering your prices, and it's just not going to work. And a lot of creative people do this without any understanding of businesses or markets. They just do it because of the way that society kind of treats creatives, which I totally understand. There's this sort of insecurity that creatives have because they're always being told growing up, oh, you'll never succeed as an artist or a musician, or, you know, oh, your creative passion of choice, like it's just not a sustainable career. You have to go and be a doctor, or, you know, go to college and study something that has nothing to do with what you're really passionate about. And hearing those things all of the time and living in that kind of like societal pressure can create these subconscious insecurities that could lead us to underpricing our work. But what you need to understand is you as a person have immense value, and that is exactly what you have to price on. So my general rule of thumb, especially if you're selling something like a digital product, whether that be like a sample pack or a Procreate brush pack or an editing pack, is to just never price below $30. There's some rare occasions where if it's like a mini pack or something like that, you could charge less. But generally speaking, as long as you aren't pricing with the intention of being the cheapest guy out there, and as long as you aren't pricing your products based off of insecurities and thinking that your art isn't valuable enough, you will be just fine. Remember, you, yourself, and your creativity hold more value than you probably think. Another thing that I see creatives doing all the time is ignoring marketing and hoping that your talent speaks for itself. This is something that thankfully I somehow managed to avoid when I started off in my creative journey and I was like watching YouTube videos. I learned the importance of marketing, social media, and like business in general. But a lot of people love to try to tell you, oh, your talent is going to speak for itself. You could be the best musician or best artist or whatever. And because of how amazing you are, like these people are just going to come to you in droves or whatever. And the reality is that's just not going to happen. Like, I don't think that's going to happen for anyone. I myself can't name one single person who that has happened for. I'm sure there are like 5 people in like the whole world maybe who that has happened for, but not many people at all. So what you have to realize is, especially nowadays when we have tools like the internet, things are noisy. There's always people trying to post something. There's always people competing for this space and attention. And if you have no visibility, you get no sales, right? And that is obviously the key to supporting ourselves financially and creating a successful creative business. And there's only one way to solve this problem, and that is to have commitment. You can't spread yourself too thin and then quit. You can't lose motivation and then quit. Anything you do in pursuit of a successful creative business, whether that's improving on your creative skill, making yourself known online, anything like that, you have to do it, and you have to do it a lot, and you can't stop. To some people, that might be uninspiring and unmotivating, but for the people who are really hungry to just pursue their creative expression to the fullest and support themselves financially, this is what you are going to have to do. The next thing that I used to do, and I see all of the time, is trying to serve everyone and resonating with no one. Honestly, generic offers, they just get lost, right? Like nothing gets through when you are crafting a generic offer. And I know you've heard this a million times and it's probably going to drive you crazy, but you have to niche down. But I'm going to try to give you a new perspective on this. The perspective that I want to give you is of the ultra uber famous Vincent van Gogh, one of the most famous artists of all time. He made paintings for his brother. That's it. He didn't make paintings to be the most legendary painter of all time. He didn't make paintings to appease the masses. He painted for one single person. And through doing this, through creating for one specific person or audience or avatar, you actually end up kind of doing the opposite, right? Like if you really think about everything that is great and revolutionary and like just like, you know, the peak of what people think is creative, it was all meant to serve one person or a very tiny group of people. Revolutionary music, revolutionary art, revolutionary writing. It was all done for the self or for one other or for one small group. And I just wanted to offer you this different perspective because oftentimes people just hear, you know, oh, like you're never going to make a generic video and have a million people see it. And it's like, that's obvious, you know, we know that. So I wanted to try to offer you something that is at least a little bit different than what you typically hear, which is the fact that actually niching down and creating for one specific avatar is the exact thing that you actually have to do to encapsulate a large audience. It sounds very opposite, but when you really think about it, big brain moment, it is absolutely essential. The next thing that is absolutely crucial to avoid is comparing your day one to somebody else's year 10. You've probably heard that comparison is the thief of joy, and you've probably dealt with creative insecurity looking at the best creatives in your specific category of creative expression and feeling like you aren't as good as them. And the same thing applies to the creative business side. I think a lot of creatives make the mistake of thinking because business is like slightly more binary and stuff like that, you can find success a lot quicker. But I want you to look at creative business success in a very similar way to practicing your creative expression, making more paintings, designing more posters, practicing your instrument more, right? All you actually have to do is focusing on showing up, being 1% better every time that you show up, just trying to improve something, or honestly, just showing up, right? I hear a lot of people say, oh, you know, post one thing a day or, you know, make one thing a day and make it 1% better each time. Honestly, you don't even have to do that. If you just show up consistently every single day, you will just intrinsically become better. So what I just want you to remember is that overnight success is just not a real thing. The pursuit of making a creative business is not going to happen in one day or 1 week or even a month. So stop trying to compare yourself to other successful creatives and try to shift that focus back onto yourself and the input that you can create that will get you closer to the success that you want. Now, number 8 is going to kind of hurt to hear, but it needs to be said. You burn out because you work when you're inspired. Waiting for motivation creates unreliable income. And unfortunately, when you're starting a creative business, you have to treat it like a job. You have to set hours, you have to do batch work, you have to take breaks. All of those things are going to happen. And I just want you to know that now, because I remember when I first started off as like a creative entrepreneur, I was super uninspired when I first heard that. I was like, oh, you know, I'm kind of trying to work towards this freedom of escaping the rat race and not working a normal job and doing all these hours. And part of that's true. You know, you don't have to work an ordinary job. You don't have to feel like a nobody. You don't have to feel like you aren't working towards something, you know, that's more true to yourself, but you gotta work, right? There's pretty much nothing out there where you're just gonna like draw on a piece of paper or like make a song and be handed $1 million. And I just think that is an important reality to accept. If you can accept this reality early, it will make it a lot easier to reach your point of success. If your main goal is to find success in a creative business while doing as little work as possible, it's just not gonna work. But if you can shift your mindset and realize even though you'll be doing a lot of work and maybe doing some things that you don't necessarily love, it's for the greater good, and it is still a privilege to be able to create whatever you want full-time as a job. That is why it is very important not to only work when you are inspired inspired. Now, the very last thing that I want to go over in today's video is a mistake that too many creative business owners make, which is trying to run a passion project instead of a business. Listen, if you want to work purely off passion, go, I don't know, make a TikTok or go to like local art stores or art exhibits or do free live shows with a band. If you want to support yourself financially and you want creativity to be your full-time job, it is a business. And this kind of ties in with the last point I was making, but this was another mistake that I made at the beginning of my career. I thought that making a living through creativity was just that. I thought it was just creative expression. I thought it was just doing what you love and then putting it out there and money falls in your pocket. And that is the complete opposite of the truth. You are running a business. And if you have no business skills, you have no sustainability. Your talent, sadly, isn't going to pay the bills. Your systems are. So the most important thing that you could do for your creative business is first to accept that it is a business, right? I know the word business kind of hurts to hear as a creative because that's not really what we want to do, but it is a business. And then the second thing that you have to do is actually learn to understand how business works for creatives. But that's okay, right? The whole goal of my channel and everything that I do here is to help creatives understand and succeed with business so that they are actually able to do what they love every single day as a job. And that is going to wrap up our video. So as a token of appreciation for you making it this far into the video, I put together this free 30-minute training video that could show you exactly how to start your own creative business, turning any creative skill into financial freedom. And you could watch it right here. Peace.